Hi everyone, meteorologist Joel Curtis with your Alaska Weather TV show, and I've got a little help from Peter Chin today. So starting out with our hazardous weather, we only have one advisory going on for the Kaktovik area. We have a wind chill advisory from 10 p.m. tonight till 1 p.m. tomorrow afternoon, and that's for temperatures, wind chill temperatures from 45 to 55 below. Also, the Juneau Forecast Office asked me to mention that we have some strong winds tomorrow for Baranof Island, Prince of Wales Island, and the Ketchikan and Metlakatla areas. So looking at our satellite image today, we've got a low pressure system wrapped up south of Sand Point. Also another low pressure system near Whitehorse with a little bit of onshore flow for southeast and the northeastern Gulf Coast. And then a lot of generally clear skies over mainland Alaska. So looking at our surface weather map, a 995 millibar low near Whitehorse. Also, we have a 975 millibar low south of Sand Point. A nice, strong-looking frontal system wrapped around that for some gale force winds. Also, we have a 1,015 millibar high over the North Slope area, and some northerly flow. That's causing northerly flow over much of the mainland portion of the state, but also you can see on the visible satellite background here a lot of clear skies. And then for tonight, that high persists over the north slope, 1,018 millibars. Also that low near Whitehorse also persists at 1,006. And then we have two lows that split off from that low that was moving up into the Gulf. The main low, 982 millibars, well to the south of Kodiak Island. And then the secondary low up by Kodiak Island with that frontal system still wrapped around that low. Lots of onshore flow for some snow for south central and the northeastern Gulf Coast, as well as some inland areas of the Panhandle. And then some rain moving on to the immediate coastal sections. For Wednesday's weather, we've got, again, that high pressure persists along the North Slope, 1,018 millibars. That low is still drifting around, this time east of Whitehorse at 1,006. Our lows in the Gulf, the main low, 988 millibars, well south of Middleton Island, while the secondary low has now moved into the Chillicothe Strait area for about 988 millibars. Lots of onshore flow, so causing still some light snow over the south central area, as well as much of the Panhandle, and some rain along the immediate coastal areas. And you can see what that frontal system is going to generate some wind. Also, some snow along the Alaska Peninsula and the eastern Aleutians with the onshore flow in the Bering Sea over the open water. And then for Thursday's weather, we've got 1,013 millibar high, which is an extension of 1,039 millibar high over Siberia. Also, that low, generally still in the Whitehorse area, about 999 millibars. The secondary low now that was in Chillicothe Strait has moved well south to 991 millibars, and that low pressure in the southern Gulf is starting to spin up again with a new frontal wrap and 984 millibars. Still some precipitation all through south central, on up into the Yukon River area. Also rain along the immediate eastern Gulf Coast, but snow inland, and then so lots of snow showers over the Bering Sea and also south of the Alaska Peninsula and the eastern Aleutians. So looking at our low temperatures Wednesday morning, generally in the 30s for southeast Alaska, and then in the 20s for much of south central, and 10 degrees for Glen Allen as you get further north. For our high temperatures on Wednesday afternoon, generally in the 40s for southeast Alaska, including 40 for Yakutat, up to 28 for Glen Allen, and then as you can see, as you get further south, temperatures in the mid-30s above freezing for Wednesday afternoon. And then for our low temperatures Thursday morning, in the mid-30s for much of southeast Alaska, so staying above that freezing mark, but 12 degrees for Glen Allen, and in the 20s generally for south central Alaska, and down to 18 for Kodiak Island as some cold air starts to sneak in behind that system. And then for our high temperatures on Thursday afternoon, generally in the 40s for southeast Alaska, 39 for Yakutat, 31 for Glen Allen, and then as you can see, temperatures in the mid-30s for much of south central, hanging in there above freezing. And then for low temperatures on Wednesday morning for the north slope, looking at temperatures all the way down to minus 26 for Dead Horse, but a lot of readings in the negative teens. As you get down toward the Books range, temperatures again in the minus 20s. But then as you get down to Fairbanks, minus 10, and then for minus 4 for Nome. And then for our high temperatures Wednesday afternoon, we've got temperatures in the single digits below for the north slope, up to 22 for Fairbanks and 15 for Nome. And then for our low temperatures on Thursday morning, temperatures in the negative teens and into the minus 20s for the north slope, as you get down to minus 6 for Fort Yukon, plus 1 for Fairbanks, and 0 for Nome. And then for our high temperatures Thursday afternoon, temperatures again in the minus teens along the north slope to the minus single digits. As you get further south, we'll start to see above 0, 13 for Fort Yukon, 26 for Fairbanks, and 22 for McGrath. For a southwestern area, our low temperatures on Wednesday morning, a lot of single digits and negative single digits out through the southwest. And then as you get into the positive teens, as you go out the Alaska Peninsula and into the 20s along the Aleutians, but 15 for the Pribilofs. And then for Wednesday afternoon, our high temperatures in the teens for much of southwestern Alaska, and into the 20s as you go out the Alaska Peninsula, and into the 30s for the Aleutians, and 22 for the Pribilofs. For Thursday morning, temperatures single digits for much of southwest Alaska, into the teens as you get further out the Alaska Peninsula, 20s in for the Aleutians, and 16 for the Pribilofs. And then for our high temperatures Thursday afternoon, getting into the 20s for some of southwestern Alaska, like in the Bristol Bay area, but 15 for Bethel, and then 25 as you go out the Alaska Peninsula and into the 30s again, all along the Aleutians, 22 for the Pribilofs. So looking at our 6 to 10 day temperature outlook for March 21st through March 25th. Generally below normal temperatures, a little bit of a probability on that direction. And then as we're getting toward normal temperatures as you get further toward the southeast, and a prediction of about a 70% chance for the southern panhandle to be above normal temperatures. And then looking for our 8 to 14 day outlook for the 23rd through the 29th, normal temperatures for much of the state of Alaska, and then above normal temperatures, a pretty good chance for southeast Alaska. And then looking at our precipitation map for 6 to 10 days, March 21st through March 25th, on the dry side for much of western Alaska, including all the way from the North Slope all the way down to Sand Point. And then we have a swath area of normal precipitation from Arctic Village down through south central Alaska, and then slightly above normal chances of precipitation for southeastern Alaska, including portions of the northeastern Gulf Coast. And then looking at our 8 to 14 day precipitation for March 23rd through March 29th. Again, on the dry side for northwestern Alaska for Utiagavik all the way down to almost to Bethel. And then normal temperatures for a swath from Arctic Village down to Dillingham. And then finally, above normal precipitation for much of south central and down into southeastern Alaska, including Fairbanks, Anchorage, and Juneau for that above normal precipitation. Well, that wraps it up for our Alaska weather public segment, and I want you all to stay safe out there, and we look forward to getting any river observations that you can as we start to head toward breakup.
And now, aviation weather around Alaska.
Well, I'm tag teaming today with Joel Curtis, and I'll cover the aviation segment. If you have a flight planned Wednesday into Thursday, we expect IFR conditions across much of the Gulf as a few areas of low pressure will be sitting up there, rotating up through the western end. There's a weak trough that'll swing through along the northern portion there of the state. The Arctic coast could bring a little IFR conditions along that. Otherwise, we expect widespread IFR conditions Wednesday afternoon from Bristol Bay across through Lower Cook Inlet, Kodiak Island up toward the east side of the Kenai, Prince William Sound into at least the northern outer coastal areas of the Panhandle. And for Thursday morning, there could be pockets of IFR, the upper Yukon River along the Alcan border, as well as in the Copper River Basin. And again, over portions of Cook Inlet along the eastern Kenai, Prince William Sound eastward through Yakutat and to near Gustavus. And then for the Thursday afternoon, still some pockets of IFR up there, maybe perhaps there in the Yukon Flats. And continuing, though maybe not quite as widespread there across especially the northern portions of the Gulf, and also a pocket out there in the southeast Bering between the southwest coast and the outer Alaska Peninsula. Pass conditions on Wednesday, Anaktuvik Pass will see generally MVFR conditions the north half up through the north slope. VFR conditions the south half down flying south through the south entrance to the Yukon River. Same thing at Adigan Pass, northern half MVFR throughout the day, southern half VFR. And then as we go down toward Lake Clark and Merrill, we expect starting out IFR conditions Wednesday morning becoming MVFR. Same thing at Rainy Pass, IFR becoming MVFR. Little further north though, Windy Pass eastward into Isabel will generally be MVFR, but I can't rule out a little VFR conditions trying to work their way in for Wednesday afternoon. Mentasta Pass should see MVFR conditions lift VFR as we go through the day. Tanita Pass, though, being not too far from the Gulf, is going to see some of that Gulf moisture spread a little further northward and inland, so expect MVFR conditions to become IFR. And Portage Pass will be a split. The eastern half through the east entrance, including Prince William Sound, will see IFR conditions on Wednesday, but the western half and the west entrance should remain MVFR. And then finally in the far north of the Panhandle, Chilkoot and White, far enough inland to see just MVFR conditions during the day, though the outer northern coast of the Panhandle will likely see IFR conditions there throughout Wednesday. With low pressure in the western side of the Gulf, we expect the freezing levels to bump up a bit there in the Gulf, 2,000 to 4,000 feet as you drop through the central and lower Gulf, with the surface freezing line running along the inner channels of the Panhandle Wednesday morning to along the Gulf Coast, south of the Alaska Peninsula, and then running across the central and western Aleutians. The greatest threat of icing on Wednesday will be there in the northern Gulf, extending from the east side of the Kenai and Prince William Sound all the way to the outer coastal areas of the Panhandle between 4,000 and 14,000 feet. There could also be some isolated moderate icing around the central and eastern Aleutians between 2,000 and 12,000 feet. And looking at the winds aloft, 30,000 feet at jet stream level, not all that impressive. Strongest winds are well south of Haida Gwaii there in the North Pacific, approaching Vancouver. Southwesterly winds to 95 knots. But as we drop down to 9,000 feet, we see that low pressure circulation there over the Alaska Peninsula. Ahead of it, out over the Gulf, especially in the interior mountains, we're seeing winds as high as 50 to 60 knots from the southwest British Columbia and up into the Panhandle. And then back on the backside of it, offshore flow from the lower Kuskokwim Delta, picking up to as high as 50 knots there in the southeast Bering and cutting across the tip of the Alaska Peninsula as they turn northward. And then finally down to 3,000 feet, that low pressure circulation near Shelikof Strait has winds with a frontal system along the Gulf Coast as high as 50 to 60 knots there just south of Yakutat. That would be an area for isolated, maybe severe turbulence on Wednesday. And on the backside, look for offshore flow out of the northeast over the YK deltas, turning northerly as it crosses the eastern Aleutians and the Alaska Peninsula. And this will translate to some areas of considerable moderate turbulence there, the west side of the Brooks Range there in the northwest part of the state, surface to 4,000 feet. The west side of the Seward Peninsula down through St. Lawrence, surface to 3,000 feet. And then as those winds turn more northerly, north-northwesterly, and cut across the eastern Aleutians and the tip of the Alaska Peninsula, there could be some moderate turbulence there between the surface and 4,000 feet. But by far, the greatest threat of considerable moderate turbulence will exist from portions of the Kenai and Prince William Sound eastward across much of the Panhandle into Haida Gwaii, between the surface and 4,000 and surface and 6,000 feet. And I wouldn't even rule out the potential for isolated severe turbulence.
Welcome to another edition of Alaska Weather Facts. I'm meteorologist Dave Snyder with the National Weather Service, and joining us today, two more people to talk about the augmented reality sandbox. It's Alana Valaji. She's a University of Alaska Fairbanks mechanical engineering student, helped design and work on the details to make this new type of sandbox there. Thanks for joining us, Alana. Thanks. And Courtney Breest, she's the outreach coordinator for EPSCoR, which is the experimental program to stimulate competitive research. It's a program funded nationally by the National Science Foundation, right?
Yes.
Okay. Alana, tell us about how you changed and adapted this version of the augmented reality sandbox. It's a really cool tool.
So Gina approached us with 3 goals for this new version of the sandbox.
Mm-hmm.
They wanted it to be compact in a light system that could travel around the state. They wanted it to be child-oriented, so we designed the sandbox to have 3 different levels.
Okay.
It's pretty cool. You can have younger children. You can have high school kids. I guess I should say high school teenagers.
Sure.
And then we also designed it to be more marketable, user-friendly, so that this could be seen eventually in classrooms all over the place, all over the state.
Okay. And you had a big hand in this, but this was a team approach, right?
Definitely. It was a really good experience for myself, for George Stevens, who we'll see later.
One of our hand models today. Yeah.
For 2 other members who aren't here today, Cody Klingman and Austin Hunt. And it was just a really good learning experience all around.
Very good. And this is something that is part of your learning experience as well, so you get to check a box in your education.
Yeah,
right?
it's a requirement for seniors of mechanical engineering at University of Alaska Fairbanks.
Very good. Very good. Well, it is a wonderfully inquisitive tool, fun to play with, and I hope to get my hands in the sand here in just a little bit. But it's also part of a bigger program, something that we were talking about a moment ago, EPSCoR, and that's what Courtney is here to tell us more about. What is EPSCoR, and why do you need a sandbox?
Well, EPSCoR, as you mentioned, is a national program. We're funded nationally, but we're actually located statewide. We're at UAF, we're at UAA, we're in Southeast at UAS. And she mentioned, taking the sandbox as an educational tool, and that's where I'm an outreach coordinator for the South Central test case.
Okay.
Our focus is on the Kenai watershed, and we are really interested in using these tools like the sandbox to interact with the students down there and get them interested in STEM and also communicate the research findings that we've been having throughout the state.
Okay. And one of those, as George and Eric are kind of changing the contours for us there from UAF to maybe something that resembles a little bit of something more of the Kenai watershed, which is one of your focuses for the study, right? And specifically looking at some of the changes there and how that impacts people and also the salmon.
Yes, it is all of our research is social and environmental.
Okay.
So we have social scientists working hand in hand with our environmental scientists. One of the things we're studying is Upper Russian Lake, and we have a researcher taking sediment cores from that lake. So one of the things we're going to use the sandbox to communicate is how the landscape changed over a long period of time, thousands of years, going from glacier, covered by glacier ice, to being filled with water. And then
that's what they're doing right now.
Exactly. So
live.
So they're moving the
cool.
water around. And then I think they've got some props over there, because we're also going to go a little bit more in depth and explain how the salmon got there.
Okay.
So using
and there's
these,
the salmon.
Exactly. Oh, I think there's a few more.
Yeah, we like more salmon in Alaska. More salmon.
Yeah, exactly. So it's really taking the findings from our research grant and just trying to connect with the community and translate it in a really hands-on and exciting way, so people can, interact with us as much as possible.
Well, sure. That makes the learning and the science real and quite literally in your face, rather than just some boring black and white paper that you have to read about. This is something that people can understand better because it's visual and they're touching and feeling and seeing these changes, right?
Yeah, and get them engaged. And then outreach is a huge component, and working with the younger students, and actually even, working with the UAF graduate and engineering students it's a huge part of our grant, and we really enjoy it.
Oh, it is wonderfully exciting. And so, Alana, you were telling us that this is built to travel.
Right.
And this is built to do more things than version 1. Where can this type of project go in Alaska? And what can it demonstrate?
I mean, we were hoping to eventually get to villages that were harder to reach, that you couldn't necessarily move a whole fixed instrument to, right? You need something that can pack up, fit in your truck bed. I mean, one of the most attractive parts of this project is that this was going to be something that was used past our graduation point. You know, this is going to be something that lives in the state for years.
Right. Well, it looks like you're well on your way with that. So what are, give me another example. What else can this show us? We've talked about the Kenai River watershed. What's the coolest thing that you've played in the sand with? What's your idea?
Well, I definitely enjoy the props, but we also like kind of building up a giant mound, and if you put some water behind it, you can make a little runway, I guess, and you know, demonstrate the effects of the hydrology by just putting up a dam and letting it all pour right down. And so that could, I think you mentioned it earlier, you could even demonstrate the effects of a tsunami.
Right.
Or something along those lines.
So it's not just topography, but it's also hydrology and coastal surge mapping and some of the coastal changes that we're seeing here in Alaska, and seeing what the smaller changes in the sandbox might do to kind of a real effect of a slosh or a push of water up on the coast. Tsunami inundation mapping, or even glacial dam release, as some has been demonstrated before. So wow, that's just an impressive thing. That it seems like the possibilities are nearly endless with this, and probably even more ideas that are popping up in your head too.
Yeah, as we speak.
Very cool. All right. Well, if folks want to get more information about EPSCoR, you guys are online. You're on Facebook, Twitter, and on YouTube. AKEPSCOR, right? EPSCoR, Alaska EPSCoR, that is. And again, you guys are funded by the National Science Foundation, so more to come from that, and a longer-term study there. Thank you, ladies, for joining us today. Congratulations on your hard work there. This is really fun. And for now, I'm meteorologist Dave Snyder with this edition of Alaska Weather Facts, and I'm going to go play in the sandbox there. We'll see you next time.
And now, marine weather around Alaska.
Hi, everybody, and now for your marine weather. Starting out with the ice edge today, a couple of leads opened up between Nunivak Island and the mainland. Otherwise, you can see a retreat that's been ongoing for Bristol Bay, but still got a lot of ice out there in the Bering Sea. For the marine forecast for southeast Alaska, starting out for Wednesday, we've got some gale force, 35 to 40 knot southeasterlies on the outside, and seas ranging up to 16 feet. On the inside, waters start out with a gale in Clarence Strait, but then it tapers off as you get farther north. Seas all the way up to 11 feet in Clarence Strait. For Thursday, wind dies down quite a bit, 10 to 20 knots on the inside, seas up to 4 feet. And on the outside, we got some southwesterlies shift around to 25 knots, seas 13 feet for small craft advisory. Otherwise, as you get further north, 15 to 20 knots and seas up to 12 feet. For south central waters, got some gale force in the eastern sections, 35 knots easterlies, seas up to 14 feet. Otherwise, 25 to 35 knots as you get over to Cook Inlet, and then 40 knots down toward Kennedy Entrance, seas up to 10 feet there, and 14 feet on the outside. For Thursday, we've got southeasterlies, 15 to 25 knots on the outside, seas up to 10 feet. And then for Cook Inlet, we've got coming around the westerlies, 15 to 25 knots and seas up to 8 feet in the southern sections. For the Alaska Peninsula and Kodiak Island on Wednesday, gale force in response to the backside of all of those lows in the Gulf. Wind 25 to 35 knots on the Bering Sea side, seas up to 11 feet. On the Pacific side, seas up to 12 feet. And then for Thursday, still some pretty good winds out of the northwest, up to gale force 40 knots south of Sand Point, seas 13 feet there. Notice that the wind is blowing through the gaps. Chillicothe Strait, northeasterlies 20 knots, seas 4 feet, otherwise 20 to 25 knots. And then for the Aleutian chain, generally northerlies pushing along at 15 to 25 knots, seas up to 11 feet on the Bering Sea side and up to 11 feet on the Pacific side. And then for Thursday, we've got northwesterlies in the eastern sections, about 20 to 30 knots or so. Seas 12 feet on the Bering side and 13 feet on the Pacific side, 40 knots south of Unalaska. And then in the western Aleutians, we've got some easterly component on the winds, 20 to 25 knots, seas 6 feet. For our western coast, northerlies, 25 to 30 knots, and seas up to 9 feet down by the Pribilofs. And then for Thursday, we've got, again, northerlies in there, ranging all the way from 20 up to 35 knot gale force, and seas up to 9 feet near the Pribilofs. For our northern sections over ice, we've got 15 to 25 knots along the north slope, and then down through the Bering Strait, 20 to 25 knots. And then on Thursday, we've got a little bit of a westerly component in there, 10 knots along the north slope, and up to 30 to 35 knots down through the Bering Strait. So a recap of tonight's weather, we've got those lows in the Gulf, a lot of onshore flow in the eastern Gulf, and a frontal system wrapped around that. On the backside, we've got northerly shaping up on the backside of those two lows. And then looking at Wednesday's weather, we've got the low near Shelikof Strait, 988 millibars, and then the main low out in the Gulf with a front wrapped around it, 988 millibars. Some high pressure to the north, which is causing northerlies through most of the state, some snow on the south central and all along the coast, and then some rain along the Gulf Coast. And then looking at Thursday's weather, we've got now the main low is taking off again southwest of Haida Gwaii at 984 millibars, and a lot of northerly flow in the Bering Sea, and lots of snow over south central on up into the Yukon River. Well, thanks for tuning in, and please stay safe out there.
These forecasts are for planning purposes only. Call 1-800-WX-BRIEF for a formal pre-flight briefing. Always file a flight plan before you go flying. The U.S. Coast Guard Auxiliary urges you to leave a float plan with a friend or the harbor master before you go boating.